we're going to play AI Supply Chain Candyland. I want everyone to just clap and cheer real quick to get some people out from the office.
Yeah! We're having so much fun in here. Out in the hallway, you feel so bad. See? Well, we're going to reward your curiosity. Thank you for coming.
That's right. All right. So let's jump into our supply chain adventure.
Ooh.
Okay, so in every game, there's the rules. How many of you are the rule followers who read the rules first? A couple of us. Then there's some of us who are just like, tell me how to win, I'll figure it out as I go. So for those of us who like the rules of the game first, I have these up here, but I want to focus on how to win the game. So as we're looking at this end-to-end view of the AI application, I want you to be thinking about how you can build on what you know, what your experience is on the supply chain, and we're going to develop a new understanding of other parts of the supply chain that we may not have experienced before. Because we're in security, people, process, and technology are very important, and so that we're going to meet some new personas as we play our game today. All right, so we are your guides in this adventure. I'm Cyber Sarah. We're going to work through the CI/CD infinity loops and beyond.
I'm Krobe. I do security stuff on the internet.
All right. Okay, so we want to understand this end-to-end view of AI applications, and here's why. Because we all know that open source accelerates technology. And if you ask your enterprises or companies that are consuming the open source that you create, if they had to code all of the open source components on their own, would they be able to move as quickly as they could? And the answer is no. We're still leveraging and getting a lot of value out of open source software. This includes open data, open models, open software, which we know a lot about open source software, shared languages, and shared tools. So all these things, hopefully you're starting to hear and think things that you can build on as we're accelerating with technology and AI applications. We want to be proactive. So I was not around studying software security when the early days of software were being used. But I heard there was a lot of excitement about building on the same set of shared software so that we could accelerate business outcomes. And I'm hearing the same thing today about AI and AI applications. And so there's a lot of excitement to build, but we know now, based on how we transition to software, that a lot of these lessons around supply chain are eventually going to apply to AI applications. The earlier we start thinking about them, the better. So we want to be proactive.
And I'll add, much like open source that has come before us 15, 20 years ago, and now that is the definitive model for developing software, AI, we are right at that same cusp. We'll have the same potential for amazingness. We also have the same potential for trouble and problems, and we ideally hope through talks like this and some of Sarah's work, like with the model, we hope we maybe can maybe learn from our past tragedies and experiences.
That's right. All right, so let's keep moving forward. So one of the things that I started to notice is, all right, we have this thing called DevOps, and it has a continuous integration, continuous development loop. Do other people who are creating data and creating machine learning models as part of this end-to-end AI application, do they have ops models, ML ops, data ops? And do they know how to put security governance into those models? I found surprisingly little information on this online. And so as I started to learn about it myself, I said, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had a fun, lighthearted way to kind of link all these pieces together so that we can talk to new people that maybe haven't heard about software security before and extend what we know into their use cases. And one morning, while drinking a fresh cup of coffee, I was about halfway into the cup, I said, it's like a board game. It's like Candyland, where we start at the beginning, we hold hands, we go on this adventure down the rainbow path, and we meet a lot of people along our way. And so that's what inspired Candyland, so that's what you're going to see today.
I think we all can fondly recall coworkers and community members that are characters. And if nothing else, Candyland definitely gives us a set of colorful characters that we get to interact with along our development journey.
And we had a little fun with generative AI to create some of those characters. Okay, so as I was kind of doing my research, I saw that DevOps over time, as we learned about securing open source software, became DevSecOps. I really think that the industry needs an aggregated view of what like machine learning operations looks like, data operations, because AI applications are really forcing a convergence across these different operations. And do we really want to have separate security processes for each one, separate tools for each one? So we need a way to really kind of think about these converged feedback loops together.
Right.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, I give you AI Supply Chain Candyland and our cast of characters. We're going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, and hopefully this is familiar enough for the developers and project people and security people to say, oh, I get DevSecOps, and I understand that there's these new cool methodologies or architectures. But at the end of the day, our perspective is AI development is just development.
We are going to come back to this slide after we go through our cast of characters, and we'll bring it back up. And it'll probably, the flow hopefully will make a little bit more, right now it's just colorful. It's like, let's get started, and we'll figure it out as we go, and we'll come back and kind of take a zoom out view of this again. All right.
Well, first off, does everyone like candy? Yeah. So let's, again, use this metaphor to walk through our journey, and we'll talk about these personas. And many of you, and from development perspective, we've been using user stories and personas for decades. And with AI development and AI kind of hardware and different architectures, we're bringing in whole new classes of people that haven't necessarily had this decade, 2 decades, 3 decades worth of development interaction. So you're bringing in data scientists or model trainers. And these are people that might not have been as close to the development processes as most of us have been for so long. So why don't we see how this starts off, Sarah?
Let's jump in. All right, so first of all, here is us. We are the secure AI/ML supply chain trailblazers. We're getting ready to go on an adventure, so let's everyone grab hands and link elbows. We're headed towards the sweet success Citadel.
Ooh.
And as we do that, we're heading into confectionery plan orchard. Now, every starting point starts with a plan. One thing that was common that I found across all of those ops models, they all had a planning phase. So if you have planned for software deployments before, there are also people potentially in different functional areas who are planning for data ops or they're planning for ML ops. And so planning is very important.
Absolutely.
And it's very common across all these characters. Okay, the first thing I want to point out is, what if you're just creating a regular application? There's no AI in it. Is that still possible today with all the new hotness? So the first thing we have is something called the prismatic pathway. Yes.
Yep.
The prismatic pathway is just the infinity loop for DevOps on its side there. You're going straight from plan into build, and then you're moving through your classic ops workflow. But we want to kind of take it one step farther, and we want to talk about maybe some of the more complicated new things that the AI hotness is throwing at us. So let's move past this into our next phase. All right, so we have Poppy the planning elf. She is helping us move into, through confectionery planning orchard. And when you're working with machine learning, or if you're working with large language models, there's still a need to do threat modeling. If it's large language models, you're thinking about prompt engineering. So these are things, what's the right model selection? Your IT teams are working with this a lot. So we're continuing on our journey with Poppy the planning elf.
Absolutely. And again, those of you that have done AppSec or app dev for years, many of these tasks should be pretty familiar.
Yes. All right, now we're headed into the Peppermint Forest of swirly-twirly dependencies. So dependencies, they're absolutely something that is of it still exists. And we are becoming dependent on data sets. We're coming dependent on models and the way models are trained. So the way that we track and analyze dependencies in software today, it doesn't perfectly track and analyze dependencies in data and models. So this is an opportunity for the industry to really kind of start to think through how do we begin to identify the dependencies of these new components for data and models in our applications.
And if we've learned nothing else from classic development, dependencies are both a blessing and a curse. And the more due diligence you put up front, the more thought and rigor, and hopefully reducing your dependencies and reducing your attack surface, the easier job everything else through our journey becomes. Because we constantly are carrying these dependencies along with us and have to manage them along with all of our model and AI work.
All right, now we have our planning engineer.
That guy.
So when we are formulating our use case and we're prioritizing our requirements, again, this is going to be a role that sits in different functional areas, but they're doing a lot of similar things in the data space and in the ML and the LLM space. Krob, we have Honk the Goose here on this slide.
Right, and again, we're both here representing the work of the Open Source Security Foundation, so I'm going to put some shameless plugs in for our amazing projects. And some of the core things you need to do is you're thinking about your dependencies, you're thinking about your supply chain. We feel projects like Salsa, which is about supply chain artifacts and attestations, and then projects like Guac that works with Salsa, works with SBOMs, and helps you kind of get a deep dive into what the components are that are part of your composite application. And also, obviously, since you're development adjacent, we think that like the work of our best practices working group, whether it's guides, a class, kind of understanding some of these core development mistakes and how to avoid them, is all very much relevant within this new AI, ML, LLM, agentic, blah, 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 blah workspace.
Well said.
Thank you. Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so we've got another shortcut, because who doesn't like a nice little shortcut in Candyland? This one is Sweet Pass. So if you're not training a foundational model, or you already have a model that you are leveraging for generative AI, then you kind of shortcut some of the classic ML use cases. So if you are training your own machine learning model and you're curating and classifying a data set, finding the algorithm that best fits and then deploying it, that's the ML track. That's kind of the classic way that a lot of organizations have used machine learning, and it's still very applicable today. But we have this new advent of generative AI, or large language models, that can shortcut that for you. So if your organization is trying to leverage large language models, then you have a sweet pass here that you can take moving into just move your application in towards leveraging that LLM.
Sweet.
But there's always a villain in every game. And so this is all about data, and managing that can seem like a villainous experience. Data and data security, getting access to the data that you have in different structured and unstructured formats is very, very challenging. So what you're going to find is AI applications are going to put in even more pressure on, do we have access to the right data? You've heard people say, well, even if you use AI, it's garbage in, garbage out. So getting that clean data that's exactly what you need for your application to work is still very much applicable in this day and age in this game.
And while he might look mean and curmudgeonly, this role is really important. This is where we anticipate a lot of the future problems with these systems coming from, is lack of data hygiene, lack of data provenance and security. So again, understanding what data you're putting in, not installing the internet into your model and all of your personal data, because again, depending on where your data lives, there may be other players that can spy upon that. So having good data rigor up front, understanding what you need, how it gets used, is critical to avoid future problems.
Yes, and from software development, we understand the compliance pieces associated with, GDPR, the right to be forgotten, et cetera. And a lot of the personas that have classically worked with large data sets before may or may not actually have been exposed to what it's been like to do compliance on those things. So this is definitely a character that we'll want to kind of bring into the fold in our game. And of course, bats are flying out of the data silo. So who's ever been around that data is in a silo, or we're making multiple copies of the same data? That problem that existed in software development still very much exists in the game of AI Supply Chain Candyland. And it's something that we'll want to make sure we're continuing to advocate for. How do we get the right data and get it out of those silos in the appropriate way, or keep it in a silo if it needs to remain there.
Mm-hmm. Spot on.
All right, are you ready to head towards the magical Model Mountains?
I am ready to head to the magical Model Mountains. Tell me more.
So now we've talked about our data. We've talked about our data overlord and our data scientists. And now what we're doing is we are working with a large data set to transform and validate that data. There's a lot of technical elements in doing this. There's whole careers of people who are working on taking data sets and curating them and transforming them to prepare for a machine learning model. I spent a little bit of time learning about these personas and what they do. They're great people. They're in the organizations. There may even be those doing that here at Open Source Summit. So try to understand as we're heading towards the magical Model Mountains. If you're familiar with something, start having conversations with the people that you know who may be working with machine learning or large language models to understand a little bit more about this process of transforming and validating data. Mm-hmm. And the character who may do that is our data alchemist. They take those data sets once they've been curated and find those models that best fit the data, and they create a model out of that data. And as they perform their alchemy, they are providing models that can get used to solve business outcomes that will be very interesting to put into AI applications.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
But
no.
don't get stuck in the sticky sweets. So everyone's going to land on the square. This one is, you really can't move on to this next stage until your model is performing as desired. So anyone who's kind of either leveraging large language models and they're doing inference on it, or they're building their own machine learning model, you have to validate that model is working as intended before you move to the next step. And then also, you want to over time be able to detect drift as well. So this is very similar to an application where you're making sure things work, you're doing testing, and then you're checking for drift. Also, we have a supply chain honk note here as well.
And again, this is where potential technology like SigStore, we recently released our AI model signing project, which is heavily integrated into SigStore and in Toto to help you sign those models so you can have that traceability and kind of understanding the integrity and the changes that might go on your work as it moves through this pipeline. Thanks, Honk.
All right, so now we're going to head toward the Lead Programmer's Lodge. This is probably the one where we're the most familiar with because we're moving into that development mode. We're consuming the curated data sets, the models, and now we're getting ready to put them into our beautiful AI application. Mm-hmm. And so we have Granny, the senior software engineer. She's, happily awaited our arrival. She's, may have gotten a little gray hair while we worked on all the kinks out of our data and our model, but now she's here. She's an expert. She's been doing this a long time, and she's ready to take that data and those models, and we're going to start code and build something that works for our company.
Mm-hmm. And here, Honk mentions that in addition to things like Salsa, we have a concise guide to software. It's the SCM guide. That's source code management best practices, kind of understanding how you need to configure these systems in a way that it maintains the security and integrity and availability of the data as it's moving through either the development process or actually the production application. This again, guac is a great thing to kind of be watching as potentially checking assorted signatures to see if we've had drift during the different stages of our model. And what else we got? Things like Dependabot or InnovateBot are also really good to kind of help alert you, hey, there was an external change that you probably need to be aware of and potentially take action, which may potentially move you backwards on your journey because you have to go account for this change and maybe make changes, or maybe it's smooth sailing.
Yeah, and if you're in the room and your expertise is in maybe the data alchemist, or you have been working with data sets, and you have less experience doing secure software development, these are great tools to work with. You've got a lot of folks who've been doing secure software development in the industry for years, and we have a lot of experience to share with you. And wisdom. All right, so now let's head to Quality Assurance Woods.
Yes, let's.
All right.
Oh.
Did you get lost in Quality Assurance Forest? So our CI/CD pipelines that we are using for our development integrated with the components coming in from data, machine learning, and large language models. This is something that, in my experience, when I was kind of talking to the characters and the personas that work with data sets and machine learning, have less experience with quality assurance. Their focus has been on getting that technology out, getting it available, and it's someone else's job down the road, down the supply chain, to figure, how to make all this stuff work at scale with quality. So this is why it's so important for us to start to have a view of how these things work together, because a lot of the components that we're working on with data and model, we have to maintain in our applications, and quality assurance is very important.
Absolutely, and again, Salsa is applicable here because we're at this stage where you're in your CI system, CI/CD, you're automating things. So again, things like Salsa can help give you good guidance so you don't have future problems. Aw.
And now we have the ops. We're getting ready to deploy. We have our Lollipop Code Maven. They are, we're nearing our journey. We're looking at all these different AI components, and we're putting them together, and we're packaging them up. This is something that software developers that have worked classically with just applications, now there's a little bit more involvement in, what is in our artifact storage, how do we containerize this, how do we think about deploying and distributing and testing this code before we deploy.
Yeah, and this is where we start to, ideally start to realize some of the value of all of our work. And again, these types of folks in classic development can be very beneficial to those of us that are just on-ramping in this AI, ML, blah, blah, blah space. Again, work with these other people within your organization. They have a lot of wisdom that can be shared.
I am seeing and hearing in my experience that there's a lot of refactoring of the work that may have happened by a data scientist or an AI ML engineer that wrote some code and it works good for when 10 people use it, but then when they try to have 100 people use it, it falls over. And so these are the types of things where we're trying to help kind of educate and bring these two worlds together. All right, are we ready to deploy?
Heck yeah.
Let's head towards frozen dessert deployment, the ops part we've all been waiting for. Did you save room for dessert?
I did.
Okay, and so here we are. We have our Royal Release Manager. Now we have, deployed. We are leveraging configuration management, version control. It's a beautiful and elegant and exciting time.
And it all goes perfectly, I'm sure. There's never any problems.
Especially when you have a magic lollipop wand. Wait, what's that smell?
I'm kind of hungry, but I'm also scared.
We're moving towards the Fudgy Swamp of Compliance.
Oh.
Do we have backup and recovery in place? Are we monitoring and logging properly?
Sure.
Do we have what we need for incident management? Oh, I'm not feeling so good. And now we're stuck in the Fudgy Swamp of Compliance.
Yeah, and this is where business meets the magical euphoria of artificial intelligence. If you are trying to sell a thing for money, especially in regulated industries, there's some things you need to do serve your customers and your stakeholders well. And For better or worse, some people love compliance. Nobody loves compliance. But it is actually a fact of life that we all need to be aware of. And ideally, you've planned all your pre-work through our journey, this long journey here. Hopefully, this is all going to start to pay off.
And Crobe, through you, I've learned a lot about product security incident response. And when AI is used in devices or on devices, it's going to have to evolve the way we show compliance for product security.
Oh.
Checklist in hand. Here is Gloopy, the vulnerability beast. As in the Fudgy Swamp of Compliance, steams and bubbles quietly float around us. We're going to check our dependency inventories, which now we understand should start including data and AI components along with that code to prepare for the inevitable supply chain attacks and risks. And we have Honk the Goose here.
Yeah, Honk is a great, helpful person on our journey. So we have, first off, the new OpenSSF security baseline, which codifies best practices, and it's also directly aligned to global cybersecurity frameworks, standards, and laws, like the CRA. We also have a working group that was so inspired by the baseline that they will be working on a baseline specific to AI and LLM development. So you'll see a unique flavor that kind of extends the baseline into the particulars and the nuances that exist in the new space. You're dealing with the new architectures and technologies, but also kind of still adhering to classic AppSec practices.
All right. So customer value unlocked. We're making money. We're saving money. And we are now meeting the sire of the secure XOps, or those integrated operational models and outcomes. And we have arrived at Sweet Success Citadel.
Yes!
Hooray! Cheering breaks out.
And there was much rejoicing.
In Candyland. Yes. In Candyland, the game ends there. But in real life, it's an eternal knot. It's that infinity loop. So we're right back where we started before in our CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so we talked about, we went through all the personas. We kind of walked through what that converged infinity loop. What I want you to do right now is think about which persona or which character you most closely align to. Do you feel like you have more experience on the data side, more experience in the compliance side, more experience in software? So think about where you are. And then I want you to start thinking about how you can become more familiar with the different characters who are involved in developing AI applications. We all don't need to become experts in those areas, but just being aware of them and knowing what kind of things they're working on and starting to educate ourselves is very important. And bonus, start thinking about what an integrated CI/CD might look like, especially if you're working at a large enterprise or you're working, at a different organization. What might that look like as security teams start to govern across, and IT teams start to work across AI apps that take from data models and deployment? And a picture is worth 1,000 words, so that's why we thought it would be very important to put together, kind of a fun, non-technical way to expose us to these ideas, because sometimes it can be very intimidating to learn. You hear something about data, you hear something about all that math involved in machine learning, or maybe you're involved in your OSPO, and you're like, I don't feel like the most technical person in the room. So use this as a resource to talk to your peers. This is supposed to be fun, and the idea is that we don't have to all generate our own Candyland games. You can leverage this one. I said we come back to it. So now that we've kind of gone through all the characters and the Candyland, hopefully this is a little less overwhelming when you look at it. And you see how we all start at the same place. We have shortcuts that we can take depending on what a use case is for our application, and then we move through data. We can then move to ML. We can shortcut over to LLMs, and we all are going to end up in that DevOps loop at the end. And there is another one as a resource for you without the characters, just in case the person you're talking to needs a little bit more of a professional look. But hey, is it really that fun? Okay, and how to win the game. So we want to build on what you already know. There is no time for any of us to start over from scratch. And so there is a lot that we know about securing applications that we need to start thinking about and talking about with our peers. And once you know where you fit in, once you kind of see which character that you align to the most, another option that you can do if you're interested in the security space is start looking at those OpenSSF technical initiatives or technical initiatives within the foundations that that are near and dear to your heart, and start thinking about how can I start to become inclusive of some of these other personas in the work that I do on a day-to-day basis.
I love personas.
Yes. In fact, we have created 2 resources that kind of kick this conversation off. I've got links below to both of these. In OpenSSF, the way we think about software developer personas is we had these 5. And then within these 5 core personas, we have sub-personas. And so in preparing some of this material, I introduced the ones that are kind of blocked out in these black squares so that we can start as we begin to create materials and extend our tools and our processes to people we're less familiar with. We can understand where they're coming from, what needs they might have, and how they might be needing to leverage the tools as we extend them to AI ML use cases.
Right. And what about your white paper?
I know that one's on the other side, item number 2. We have partnered, so I work at Dell. Ericsson is also very involved in OpenSSF, and they have a really nice reference architecture for what does it look like to bring different personas together to do secure ML ops. And it builds in a lot of lessons learned from DevOps and DevSecOps. So our companies partnered together through OpenSSF. We created a white paper that shows how to add security to machine learning operations, and we're hoping to have it published by the end of the month.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. The big goal was to have it published by today so we can actually flash the white paper up, but open source being what it is, we needed a little bit of time, but we're getting so close. We're really excited about this resource. It's another little more technical, professional resource that you can use in your companies.
But wait, there's more.
We also have a booth.
Yay!
And look
Well,
at
not
all-
anymore.
Not anymore?
They closed it. But
Oh.
we do have a community day. So we have a whole day tomorrow dedicated to the OpenSSF, and we will have some special guest speakers talking about some of these related topics, but we'll also be talking about AI, AppSec, supply chain, vulnerability management, a whole host of other things. So this would have been great if they didn't close down the place early, but they closed it down at 3.
I still love all those logos all in one place. That's another little cast of characters right there. So there's a lot of a really nice work that's happening in some of these areas to start to extend in to be inclusive of data and model as we deploy with code. So I'm just excited to see what the future holds.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
We hope you enjoyed AI Supply Chain Candyland. All right. Oh,
Let me be Donahue. Hold on. Expert in the audience has a question.
Expert. Yeah. Well, that's an honor. So tomorrow's session, the community day, is that a free or cost item to attend?
It is now a cost item. What was it? $25.
you get lunch.
What?
Well, now I'll look like an expert.
For $25, you get lunch and a T-shirt and the wisdom of the community.
Does it start at 9?
It starts at 9.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be up here in one of the breakout rooms. I think it's the Bluebird Ballroom. What was that, Adrian?
I think it's in 3A and B.
3A and B,
Oh,
and then
all right.
just for the recording, perhaps the audience online, the cost is $25. It's also available virtually, so if you're not here and you want to participate in Community Day, we've got keynotes on what does the future of OpenSSF look like in the age of AI? We're talking about our projects, how our projects are potentially extending to new AI use cases. A lot of really good conversations. agents. 2025 is the year of the agents, so you're going to definitely see some talks about agent security as well.
And he definitely was not a plant. That was great. I know. We're glad to talk. Oh, I see another expert in the audience has a question. Also not a plant.
So you've introduced us to a lot of personas, but OpenSSF has been going a fair while before you've created those personas. Are you having to go back through all the OpenSSF projects to adjust how they talk to their users to also include these many, many other cute characters who are suddenly here?
Yes, we are. And we think
Tell me about that.
That is something that we're putting together in like an AI security program. What does it look like? We just actually had our board meeting earlier this week where we were talking about strategically, how does it look like to extend what we know about software development into AI? And how do we, align with our technical advisory council, our tech members, and our working group leaders to create a safe space for them to understand what the hard work that they've done does extend to AI. So that's one of the other reasons that I built this Candyland, is because we also need a way to talk to people who maybe feel really intimidated by trying to understand data or models. They know what they know in OpenSSF, and they want to figure, they like the idea of extending that, but what does that mean? So we're kicking off those conversations, and they're going well. Early days, and I hope to continue to see speed and momentum. We have an AI/ML working group that we stood up to have a space where we could just really think about and talk about AI/ML as we figure out how does it need to ultimately extend across into our other technical initiatives on a day-to-day basis.
And I meant to start by saying I'm a gloopy, the compliance emoji, whatever it represented.
Gloopy.
I definitely identified with the gloopy section. I was like, yeah. And so obviously I have discovered AI/ML gloopies out there in my organization, and folk who are either passionate in it or who've been given the job of go dive into this. Rather than throwing them at the entirety of the OpenSSF, how can I give them make my life easy, packaged element? So I'm going to be like, how do I grab Candyland and throw it at them? But how do I take the rest of the stuff OpenSSF is offering so that I don't have to sit and try and be a proxy for everything?
So fun fact, we were discussing this at the TAC meeting. We are working, is anyone familiar with the CNCF landscape? Okay. So we don't have such a thing within our foundation, but we've worked on a set of user journeys based on these personas. As a developer, I need to understand how to write secure software type things. So we will be, after I'm back from vacation, we will be going to the TAC, making sure validating that what we put in there was right, and do they have changes, or were we wrong? And we will be unveiling a set of user journeys. We'll be reshaping our website, and we'll have a drop-down menu saying, what is your role? What would you like to learn about? And then we'll present our delightful friend Honk in an inner tube floating down a lazy river, and at each bend of the river will be a particular project that helps fulfill that user story and helps that person achieve those objectives. So that'll probably be third quarter, probably the end of third quarter, that'll actually be public. And if you participate in our community, we would love to get feedback. Question, comment? Oh, another expert has a question.
So the traditional DevSecOps pipeline has, we know without an LLM involved, has a certain set of tools that OpenSSF is providing. You talked about like the security baseline having some version of that for things that include Gen AI. What about all of the others? So like Scorecard doesn't really take that into account. I don't know what the future of Scorecard might look like when you talk about that. I think Salsa similarly, like I don't have a vision in my head of what that would look like. Do you have any thoughts there?
I honestly didn't pay these folks. So yes, today we don't have a lot of tooling in this space, but With the AI baseline project, once they go online, we will get that integrated into things like Scorecard and be presented in LFX. So if it's like an LF universe thing, you'll be able to get the AI baseline qualities of it. And we are currently partnering with DARPA on the AIXCC competition. So there's a group of researchers that are trying to use AI to solve some problems. Those results will be released at Hacker Summer Camp. So if you're going to be in hot Vegas in August, there will be several projects that are kind of vying for some prize money. And as the end result of that, we potentially will have several AI-based tools that will be coming into our foundation, potentially. And then we will have a broader story on how we might be able to support this new type of development with potentially other tools. And then, again, gradually you'll see changes in Scorecard to reflect this. Salsa, I haven't talked with them specifically about AI, but I have a long series of meetings with them over the next few weeks, and we definitely can kind of put that bug in their ear. They're right now working on finalizing their dependency track. And again, we can try to influence their roadmap and say, hey, have you thought about this? And see if that group is interested in kind of having a salsa-specific AI or AI-specific kind of flavor of salsa.
So you mentioned right at the end the agentic word. Like we've got the MCP, agentics and things. Do you feel that your current Candyland board covers that, or is there an expansion pack coming?
The current what covers that?
Like, does the current larger infinity loop
The
cover
larger
those
Primland.
topics, or do you need to add more and have a Candyland expansion?
So I think it covers it. I think what we're going to see agents be. They're an application. They're very app oriented. So I think they're going to be. You're going to have software developers that are going to need that have been trained in secure software development that are going to need. All right, how are these agents working? How are they leveraging LLMs? How are they leveraging data? So it's going to make. I think agents are going to accelerate and speed up our need to do a lot of what we just talked about in this Q&A session and start to share knowledge and build on our current knowledge, because it makes existing challenges worse faster. But it's the same. I think it's the same game board.
It's like staying close in our analogy, it's like being able to having the different rule set, right? You get the rule set for experts that's going to be a bit harder or a bit quicker, or you've got the let's play the board backwards type style of
Yeah.
agentic comes along and we're just going to change the rules a little bit, go faster in one piece of it, but the actual all your design you've been doing for this is the picture of the AI loop, that's going to stay the core. You got some more.
From what I've
work.
seen so far today, yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
But patches are always welcome.
Yeah. If anyone is able to be an expert at answering all agentic AI questions, I question that because we're all just kind of learning as we go. In my mind, I just see moving around the infinite loop, just kind of all the colors start to blur together. It's just going to be very accelerated, and we're going to need to be even more comfortable with how everything is converging at an accelerated rate.
And we are at time. I want to thank the audience for your engagement. I hope you learned and laughed a little. And if you have questions, just grab us in the hallway, or if you're coming to Community Day, we'll talk more there. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.